Looking at the chat. Okay, so like I said, a little bit different format tonight. We're going to start off by talking about kind of just a little bit of review from Ephesians. Then we'll have a little bit of open discussion, and then we'll talk about what we want to do next. So, first of all, if you had to pick one message that you took away from Ephesians, and so we just wrapped up, what was probably the biggest thing you took away from Ephesians?
Buy a good belt.
Well, something stuck that I said, so that's good. Bob, Bob's got the Testudo tactics. Okay, good. The history lesson I apparently went well. So a couple answers have been unity. People are saying unity at a couple different levels. Give me an example. Like, what's a specific element of unity that we learned about in Ephesians? And we can talk. This is a Discord.
Fine.
Even though I'm here, I can't answer every question because I missed some of the studies. So you guys have to figure it out on your own.
Unity with Christ, unity with other believers, and then the levels of relationships that unity looks like in practice.
Good. What else?
Well, I wasn't entirely joking when I said buy a good belt. At least in terms of how you explained it, a good belt and like truth are very important. And if everything's based on lies, you're going to be in a big mess, and your sword's going to get on the ground, and you're probably going to get stabbed. Just that is truth as well as the actual analogy that's in the text.
No, that's true. Pun intended. No, it is true though, and we've seen this repeatedly in the news lately. But if your faith isn't built on truth, both integrity and the truth of the gospel, everything else falls apart, and you'll be ineffective, and you'll get cut up in the battlefield that we talked about. Yeah. I'll be honest. I learned. I've gone through Ephesians. I think this is my third or fourth time doing it in CC. But I learn more every time. And the one thing that stuck out to me this time that I'm shocked that I didn't make the connection before is the unity in the sense of the armor of God illustration. So Paul knows a lot about Roman soldiers because he's chained to one, or was before he wrote this. So he knows a lot about Roman soldiers, and the people he's writing to would have seen Roman soldiers. They would know kind of how they operate, and they would know that they never operate in units smaller than 10 guys. They're always in. They're always in a unit, never operating alone. So when Bob posts his picture of the Testudo tactics, that's actually, even though we joke about it, it's not historically inaccurate. The Romans always fought as a unit, and when one guy didn't take care of his armor, or if one guy got out of shape, or one guy let down his guard and got stabbed, that opening that he left in the formation put the rest of the formation at risk. So what that means is when we think about the armor of God and we think about the Christian walk and resisting the wiles of the devil and casting down spiritual strongholds, I think a lot of times we think of it as us versus the devil one-on-one, but it's not. It's not at all. The type of warfare it's being referenced there is very much it's a group activity, right? It's everybody on the line pushing together, like we talked about. So what that means is when we do things like when we lie, or if we um, have what's called a moral failure in the church, which can be any number of things. Whether that be a embezzlement or an affair or dishonest business practices or greed. These sorts of things don't just affect us; they affect the cause of making disciples, and they affect the other people in the church. Um, so for whatever reason, I just never made that connection from Ephesians before. So that element of unity, the unity is not just a help, but also a responsibility. I think was something that I learned about this time through Ephesians. That's okay, Mario. No worries. We're just kind of sharing different stuff that we learned going through Ephesians. What else? Anybody else? Go ahead, Kess.
The provision of God for making that unity possible. As in, it's not just a duty that he commands, but something he supplies grace to actually make possible, despite how mortal and frail we.
Good point. Yeah. We talked about that a lot about that in Ephesians 3 and 4. Yeah, good point. It's not that something he says, go have unity, good luck, right? I was going to pick on Winged, but he's not feeling well, so we won't make him give a lesson he learned. All right, last call. Anybody else? The question was, what's one thing that you learned from our time in Ephesians? That's okay. Go ahead, Mario. As Mario's typing, I will say one of the things I learned during our time in Ephesians is that Bob is kind of the king of the Bible study memes. So All right, as Mario's typing, the next question that we're going to ask, and this is a dangerous question, but my pastor was willing to ask it at church a couple weeks back, so I guess I'm willing to risk it
love
here.
these questions.
But the question would be, what do you feel God has been teaching you so far this year? So that's the question we're going to be coming to, which is an unusual on-growth question, I know, but we'll get there. We'll wait for, in 2019 so far. Nice, Mario. Good. Okay. So that is the question. What do you feel God's been teaching you so far in 2019? It doesn't have to be anything serious. It could be, be somewhat serious, I guess. But it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be something simple. Just I don't really think we've taken the time to kind of stop and share with each other what we've been just learning personally in a little while. So I figured in between studies this week let's take some time to do that. So go ahead and answer, not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but what do you feel God's been teaching you so far in 2019? Mario's hand is raised, so go ahead, Mario.
I'll use this time quickly and see if the mic is working.
Yep, it is.
Wonderful. What has God taught me so far this year? As some kind of continuation of 2018, that He really is there, and I can trust Him more and more. All those anxiety things that I had up until, let's say, the New Year's Eve, small changes there. I mean, anxiety doesn't leave you just like that, or certain phobias and all this stuff, but small changes there. And when it comes, for instance, to certain appointments, be it employment office, doctors, or whatnot, I am a bit more relaxed, for instance. So this in a way, and since this all falls under the big package of certain fear of people in a way, or anxiety around people in a way, even online to some degree, all things are getting better in a way. I can't probably explain it all, but I would throw this in, and I'm super thankful for that. I really hope that this small bit that I saw will get bigger. So, hey, God promised us that those who He justifies, He sanctifies. Blah 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 blah. So yeah, more maybe later.
No, that's good. Thank you, Mario. Thanks for sharing. Go ahead, Eagles.
Well, my small group's been going through the Wild at Heart series and learning about basically who God is, who men are supposed to be, and kind of following toward what our purpose is supposed to be.
Nice. That's John Eldredge's series. I've heard a lot of good things about him. Good. Go ahead, Josh Cancel.
What? Why am I Josh Cancel?
It's voice commands for football. Otherwise, it makes him.
Okay. I've been really seeing how much prayer affects your life in, like, not as much in the ways that where you're praying for yourself, but praying for others, and then also like additional perks. Like I started praying for 20 minutes when I get in my car, if I have 20 minutes of driving to do. And then after, a week or so of doing that, I found myself not yelling at other drivers. Like that's just one example of praying for one thing, and like because you decide to give up, your time to listen to podcast or whatever, then other things in your life can, I'm gonna say always will, but other things in your life can start going much better.
Nice. That ties in well with something I've been kind of learning this year too. But thanks for sharing. Go ahead, Red.
Well, there's been two different things. The first thing is definitely just after last year and all the craziness and stuff, more eager dependence on God, because just so much happened last year, things that actually forced me to question, is God good? And in the end, yes, no matter what this sink or swirl does, he is still good, and I continue to seek him daily for it. So that's a major one that's come into play this year, just continued dependence. But also discovering that I have not apparently been, I've been raised in church, been to Bible college, all this kind of stuff, and yet I still am finding brand new things in the Bible, and it just blows my mind. But this year, reading the Bible, and it's just crazy. I've talked to Scribe a couple of times about just things I read and been like, what? How did I never know this before? So it's just really cool that even though growing up in church and going to Bible college and stuff, you still find things in the Bible that just blow. It's really awesome.
No, it's true. I agree. I mentioned Ephesians is one of my favorite books. I've read a lot. I've done 3 studies for it, at least, probably 4, I think, here in CC. And I guess I've never made some of the connections that we as a group made out of that book this time through. So it's amazing how the Bible is that way. You can read it and you think you've gotten everything out of a certain book or a certain area, and you'll read it through at a different point in life. You'll be like, oh my gosh, how did I never see that before? I didn't say an acronym, Everett, so don't worry, you didn't miss out on too much. All right, what else? This has all been great stuff, guys. Thanks so much for sharing. Anybody else want to share something that they feel God's been teaching them this year? I'll share one of mine. So I asked you guys to share and then didn't share myself. That's the importance of honest prayer. Reading a book about prayer in a distracted world, and one of the points that the author makes is that we can get away from praying when we feel that our prayers aren't holy enough. If we know that our sinful nature is kind of shining through in our prayers, a lot of times we either dress up our prayers and pray what we think we should be praying instead of what we actually want to be saying, which is dangerous because we're trying to hide our true selves from God. And letter B, number 2, either way, we'll just if we don't do that, we'll just pray less. And I have been guilty of both A and B in the past. I'm that guy who Job's friends in the book of Job who will often talk about God with theologically correct things, but not instead of talking to God with what is honest. And in the book of Job, in case you don't notice, Job's friends who speak theologically correct things about God get rebuked by God, and God gives an answer to Job. The reason for that is Job speaks to God, Job's friends speak about God, and God would rather have us speak to him, and because he's a person and is in a relationship with us. So that's something that I need to remember and need to commit more time and energy to praying and praying honestly. And if if that means praying selfishly sometimes, then asking God for forgiveness for that and helping me to work through that, but still praying honestly. So that's something that I am working through and learning so far just in 2019. All right, last call. I don't want to cut anybody else off on this. So if anybody else has anything they want to share on that, now's the time. Go ahead. All right, so last order of business tonight. What do we do next week? We are at the conclusion of Ephesians. Before Ephesians, we went through Romans. Before Romans, we spent a whole year in Genesis. So we are looking to see what we want to do next as a group. As usual, this is a bit of a democracy / oligarchy. You guys are willing to suggest able to suggest anything, and then Wing and I will ultimately make the decision with prayer. But we're always willing to listen to the input from the community because that's why we're here, not just to talk into a vacuum, but because we're here to help you guys study the Bible and study it ourselves. So we are looking for any topics. We don't do a ton of topical series around here, but we're willing to do them if you guys have topics you want to do, or books that you want to go through. Before you start, let me tell you what always happens whenever I ask for this. Whenever I ask for this, people always want to do either Song of Solomon's or Revelation. My pastor one time said, people have 3 questions. They want to ask about sex, the end times, and will there be sex in the end times? So we have done a Revelation study before. We don't have any plans to do another one of those in the near future. And we like to keep it all age appropriate. So we will not be doing a Song of Solomon study. That being said, any other books or topics, open the suggestions on. Oh, and before I can even get it out, I got the suggestion in the chat from Eagles. Awesome. And from Bob. Sweet. You guys know the memes even better than I do. Go ahead, Cass.
Galatians for maybe 3 reasons. One, it's a book about conflict Paul had with some people he loved dearly, but it was a very serious conflict and he needed to speak to them strongly. 2, I want to see how he handles that conflict and study it and understand it a little better. And 3 is just base curiosity. I heard there was a swear word and I want to know all.
Hey, that's a legitimate reason. No, that's actually a good suggestion. Not to say that some of their suggestions aren't good, although some of them aren't. But that's a very good suggestion because number 4, it also ties in well with Romans and Ephesians. I've heard the claim made that if Romans is taught correctly, you need Galatians to clarify it.
That's a bold claim, considering they were sent to practically opposite ends of an empire.
It is a bold claim. One could argue, though. We won't get into that. Yeah, the Song of Solomon study is going on pretty heavily in the chat there. Silver has her hand raised. Go ahead, Silver.
Timothy has always been a book that I've been really interested in doing a deep study on. I feel like there's plenty of younger people who live or work in a community or workplace that's kind of dominated by an older generation, and I'd love to do a book on, or a study on Timothy, on how Paul teaches Timothy to kind of function in that kind of a world.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of Timothy in that context before, but it does kind of work. There would be some differences because he's in a church leadership capacity, but certainly some principles you could take and export into a secular workplace. Interesting. That's a good consideration. Go ahead, Priest.
So mine is partially inspired from both of us having the same thing to share, and partially inspired by a 3 a.m. conversation that I had. Seems that almost nobody knows how to pray, or if they know how to pray, they don't know how to pray or are afraid to pray in public. Where basically everywhere I've been in my entire life, it's been 2 or 3 people praying 90% of the time. And I think in the conversations that I've had over the past couple of weeks, it's because no one actually seems to know how to pray or know the importance of you personally praying in front of other people.
Interesting. That would be a good topic, yeah. I'd have to do some research on that because it's a weak place for me, as I've expressed. But yeah, that'd be good.
I know you weren't expecting that much homework in the suggestions, but
well, we could just stick it on Winged too. I mean, that would work too. Love you, buddy.
Or anything.
Well, Winged's sister and I have both said Matthew.
We only look at Matthew on Christmas.
It's a good point.
It's kind of interesting. In the Wild at Heart series we're just reading about, and I never read the Christmas part of. If you read Revelations 12, it actually has a very unique view on the Christmas story.
First of all, points for subtly bringing Revelation into the recommendation. But no, Matthew is good. I missed both of your guys' recommendations because I was just scrolling through all the Song of Solomon references.
I was really just trying to explain to Mario, because over there in Europe they may teach it a lot more than they teach it here.
Matthew would be good. We did one 5-6 years ago. I don't think anybody here was around then though when we did it here, so it'd basically be new. It is a long haul one, but we could certainly do it. You got a couple of gospel recommendations up there.
a goat just mailed me a book all about those.
So a lot of people are typing, so I'll wait for some of those to come through. No, that's a good one, Silver. That's an important one too. It also explains why some of us, and I gotta be careful how I word this, but I think we find ourselves preferring or gravitating towards one of the four Gospels. Often it says something about either our personality or our background, which is fine. They're written for different audiences, so it's fine to gravitate towards one over the other. Yeah, Reb. It makes you feel any better? I gravitate towards Luke too, or Luke as well. And the reason for that probably is because Luke is written for a Greek audience, so he's making a coherent argument the entire time.
Basically,
resonates
Luke
well
is
with me.
written for the kinds of people who will hang out on the internet and have a Bible study on a Thursday night. Just
Pretty much. We are if the Gospels are audience targeted ads, we are getting targeted by Luke. And Bob knows how I know that because of Becca. I can't hide anything from Bob. Feel like he knows a lot about my background because of his education he's going through right now. We usually do books, Joe. We kind of do the exegetical, just let the book say what it says in its context thing. But we have done topics. We did a how to debate as a Christian topic at one point. We've done a couple different theology ones. We've done a couple different life application ones. We did a relationship series once. That was begrudgingly accepted by the leaders at the time. I feel like somebody raised their hand and I missed it. But looking back, I'm not seeing any. No, we didn't always have. So we have records of all the studies from when football's been recording it. Before that, we didn't have a consistent uploading presence. So those most of those we don't have records of.
the real shame is we don't have any recordings of the ones I left.
Reb. All right, this is good feedback. I will talk these over with Winged when he's feeling a little better. Just to be totally honest with you guys, gut feel for where I'm leaning. I would lean towards doing Galatians or Timothy first before jumping right back into Matthew. I feel like we just got out of a couple books that took us forever. I'm not super enthused about jumping right back into one, but if there is a strong desire for it, and Wing wants to do it, certainly open to it. So we'll take a look at it. But yeah, might do Galatians or Timothy or both quick first, and then go back into a longer book like Matthew or Luke. If you guys have any other suggestions that you think of after this, and you're like, man, I wish I would have mentioned that, just shoot me a PM in Discord, and or a DM, I guess they're called here. Dating myself with the PM thing. Shoot me a DM in Discord. Forgive me for being an old man with old man terminology. Days of forum boards back in my day. Yes, Mario. In the meantime, let's close out in prayer. Real quick, any closing prayer requests that we